Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are back with Coffee Break Real Estate. This is episode 5, and we're actually going to continue on what Danny was talking about last time. Last time we jumped in and just kind of going over Danny's background and, just kind of like a timeline of what led him to where he is today. And the first thing we spoke about was wholesaling, which was a great segment there. And then we jumped into flipping and we showed the relationships between the two. And now what we want to dive into, which Danny spoke about briefly, is buying rental properties. So Danny, when in your journey did you start the buying properties and thinking, you know what, let me start renting these out as opposed to flipping?
It was pretty early on. I think when I bought my first rental, I pretty much had a deal come across my desk, and it was just like I had a idea of wanting to buy rentals. So I think once I saw a property that came across, while I was wholesaling, when I saw one that I was like, okay, this actually could be a pretty good rental, is when I just bit the bullet and bought it. By the way, what are you drinking? What's your coffee today?
Same thing every day, except I've been pretty cold lately. So, I mean, usually all year round in Chicago, I drink iced coffee,
Yeah.
but I've been super cold. It's been super cold here, but today is actually 70 degrees out and sunny. So
70?
I'm drinking, yeah, no joke. So I'm drinking my
Wow.
usual cup of mushroom coffee and I threw some ice in there. How about you?
Nice. Typical black coffee. Got the Stumptown
Show me the
in
mug.
a Hawaii mug. Kala Paui Market.
All right, whose
So
mug is that?
it's pretty cool. Cynthia's.
Cynthia's? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, sweet. All right, so buying rental properties. I know this answer is different everywhere, right? So if we're talking about, if you're going to answer this question, I want you to answer it in the form of thinking about Phoenix, Arizona, or maybe even the surrounding counties and stuff like that. Is renting out properties still worth it today?
It can be if you come across a good deal, or if you're in a position where you're willing to give up some cash for, not as much cash flow. Like we talked about on the last episode, cash on cash return, right? So it's how much money you're putting out versus how much you're bringing in. Now, Phoenix is not the best market right now for cash on cash return,
Okay.
because prices are fairly expensive still, and rents are expensive as well. But when you look at that ratio of price to rent, it's not very good, right? But Phoenix has a lot of upside in other ways. We're a appreciating market. We tend to appreciate a lot faster than other markets when the real estate market is appreciating. So there's that. It's a hot market, I would say, as far as people moving there. You can attract some pretty good renters overall. So yeah, it can be good. It just depends on your goals, or can you come across a really good deal?
So think about rates and where they are, because
Mhm.
when you started doing rentals, do you remember what the rates were around at that time?
Yeah, I mean, it was, at the lowest they were. So 2, 3,
Mm,
4%. I was getting a DSCR loan, which you obviously know because you offer
yeah.
them debt service coverage ratio loans, which we can go in a little more detail on, but the rates are a little higher. So I think when I had a few rentals, they were, in the 5, 6% range on a DSCR. So rates themselves were really low at the time, because I think
hmm
DSCRs are what now, 7 or 8,
Well,
depending.
actually, no, yeah, I mean, you can get them for even in the sixes now, but DSCRs have gotten a lot better, a lot more promising since the time where the rates were lower. DSCRs, if I were to kind of just throw a blanket number out there, let's say interest rates, I'm just throwing them out there. It's kind of close to where they are right now. Let's say interest rates, if you're buying a single family home as your primary home, let's say 6%. If you buy it as an investment property, it'll be like around 7% to 5%. But if you're getting a DSCR, then you should be in between, maybe around a 6.75 to maybe a 6.99. But it all
Pretty solid.
depends,
Yeah.
but I mean, typically nowadays DSCRs have had the advantage over investment property loans.
Interesting.
Yeah. But that's a good thing to talk about is the rates, right? Because here in Illinois, we have the high property taxes. So it's causing a lot of these homes that are getting on the market to not be worth it. They're not cash flowing, they're losing out. So it's like if a person buys them and they're relying on breaking even, or if they're saying, okay, well, I'm going to lose out until I could refinance to a lower rate. It's hard to look at because not just property taxes are high, the interest rates are high, but in Arizona, I mean, they're like 1/6 of what they are here. So that's why I was asking if it's still worth it in Phoenix or even Arizona as a whole. Now, anything to
Yeah, so
add to that?
property taxes are low for sure. So that does help the monthly cash flow. But it's very hard to cash flow right now. If you're buying a property at retail and only putting 20% down, it's very, very, very hard to cash flow. If you're doing just a traditional rental, you're not, splitting the house up or doing an Airbnb or something. If you're just doing a traditional rental, putting 20% down, buying retail, it's very hard to cash flow in Phoenix right now.
Okay.
And even when I
And
was doing it, it was tough. The rentals I had were in Tucson, where
oh, yeah.
prices were a little lower. It was still a decent market, and there was volume there and transactions, but prices were a little lower and rents were still strong. So we were able to cash flow down there.
Okay. Now, as far as rental properties go, did you always have to put 20 or 25% down?
No, so I did. So one of my first rental property ever was a condo that I bought for $40,000.
Wow.
And I put 12 grand into it. And so I was into it for 52, but it was only worth like 100 grand. Oh, I was trying to refinance out, so I didn't have to leave my cash in there, but most lenders on DSCR loans have a minimum that's about, I think, 100 grand loan value, and I couldn't get that because of how cheap the condo was. So I did what was called the BRRRR method, right? So it's buy, remodel, rent, refinance, and repeat. So you buy a property. What you want to do is you want to get a really good deal on a property, and you buy it, and then you renovate it. So you're adding value with the renovation, and then you rent it. So now you're adding value by renting it. So a lender would look at it and be like, okay, this is a strong asset. It's being rented. And then you refinance it out. And by refinancing it out, you're doing a cash out refinance. And that pulls a lot of your money out. And in some scenarios, you could be into a rental for $0 or make money even because you're able to refinance out all the money that you put into it. So just for
Okay.
quick math, let's say you bought a property for $100,000 and then you renovated it and the renovation costed you $30,000. And then you rented it out and let's say that after your renovation and the rental, you get an appraisal done and it's worth $200,000. What are lenders doing cash out refis for at what loan to value ratio on your end right now? Is it 70%, 80%?
Typically, it's 75%.
Okay.
I do have a lender that I'm partnered with that they can go up to 89.99%, which is,
Wow.
yeah, it's very rare.
Okay. Well, let's just say on the low end, it's it's 75%, right?
Mhm.
So you bought it for 100, you put 30 into it. You're into it for 130. Let's just say you had other costs, $20,000, closing costs, whatever, holding costs. If you if the house is worth $200,000 now and you do a cash out refinance, you're getting a mortgage on the house, but the lender is giving you $150,000, which is what you had spent originally. So now, technically, you're keeping this mortgage or you're keeping this house and you have $0 into it. Now you have to put 150 into it up front. Some of that could be hard money, but you put 150 into it up front, but now you're pulling out 150. So now you're into it for $0. The few rentals that I had were all BRRRRs. Again, buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. So I was into them for less than 20%
Okay.
because I didn't go the traditional route. But I think if you're buying it off the MLS, then yeah, you normally need to put at least 20% down. But like I said, that's hard to cash flow.
Yeah. Okay. So, what do you prefer based on your investment strategies? Do you prefer that, cash flow a month, or do you prefer, you know, fix, flip, boom, get lump sum money in?
It really depends. Now, I do regret not keeping more properties. So now looking back, I wholesaled some and made a decent amount of money, or I flipped some and made a decent amount of money. But then I was like, man, I should have been keeping, especially when rates were low. So it's hard to like have a clear calculation on, hey, I'm gonna keep this and I'm gonna flip that. But it's just whatever kind of fits your buy box and what you want. like I said on the last episode, certain types of properties some people don't want. So like
Yeah.
if I don't want to keep condos as rentals, which I had a condo as a rental and I didn't love it, so I probably would just flip that, you know. But if I liked certain properties or certain areas and the numbers made sense and it's like, hey, just keep those. And I'm all about delayed gratification now. I think I wasn't really into that as much when I first started because you saw these big paydays and you wanted them.
Yeah.
But
Makes
now it's
sense.
more so, you look back and you're like, okay, well, I could have made a little bit less money that year. Setting yourself up for the future is huge. So, and owning rentals is really a great way to build wealth long term, defer taxes. There's a lot of benefits to owning rentals. One thing I will say though is it's not as passive as people say it is. People call it passive income, but
Hmm.
it's definitely a lot of work, but it's worth it. It's not I wouldn't say it's bad, but yeah.
I'm glad you said that it's not all passive because even if you do the BRRRR method, you're going to be heavily invested in from the front load of it when you're renovating the property, whether you're doing the renovations yourself or you're contracting it out for people. So it's not completely passive. And then, if you don't have a property manager, let's say you're the one that's responsible or you're the one that's going to be fixing the issues that come up, it's not all passive. So when people say passive income, it's not passive, but you can call it passive because it's not your active, 9 to 5 or full-time job.
Exactly. And I
So,
will say
oh,
even
go
with
ahead.
property management companies, it's still not passive at that point. I've dealt with
Yeah.
property management companies where you have to manage the property manager. Like there's still stuff going on and moving pieces, but like you said, it definitely is more passive than your active 9 to 5, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that do come up.
Okay, so let me ask you this. You're looking at for a rental property. For you, what's more important? Is it that cash flow each month or is it the home's appreciation?
That's a great question because I've never bought in markets that don't appreciate as much,
Hmm.
but I do know people that own a lot of houses in Kansas City or Ohio,
Hmm.
these smaller Midwest towns that have really, really good cash flow because the houses are cheap and rents are decent.
They're
So,
strong.
yeah, so I see both sides. It goes back to again what your goal is and what you want because, that works too. Like I mean, for me, I don't want negative cash flow. I will say that. There are some people that are willing to take a little bit of negative cash flow because of the appreciation or the tax savings. I still want things to pencil out, but I also do see I do see the advantage to appreciation and having a house in a really good market. So I'm kind of in the middle with that. I don't mind. Like I would buy a house right now that broke even for sure in Phoenix all
Why
day
is that?
because of the long-term upside with the appreciation in Phoenix, and then also with depreciation on taxes, that kind of helps too. And just like I said, just, it's going to appreciate in Phoenix long term. So I would take something that breaks even. But one thing with that is a lot of people don't account for monthly when they're running their numbers. A lot of people just say, "Hey, my mortgage is $2,000. I could rent it out for $2,000. That's breaking even." And that is not breaking even
That was
whatsoever.
my follow-up question.
Yeah. So I have a calculator and everyone kind of does things differently, but you have to account for maintenance because stuff's gonna break. You're gonna have broken toilets, you're gonna have leaks, you're gonna have broken water heaters, whatever. You have to account for capital expenditures, which aren't broken items necessarily. They're things that you have to eventually replace, right? Like a roof only lasts so long. A water heater only lasts so long. So those things have to get replaced. So they have a lifespan to them. So you have to account for every 20 years I have to redo the roofs. So even though someone's living there and I'm making money on it, well, every month that roof is technically going down in value or however you want to look at it. And then you have to account for vacancies too, because let's say, most tenants only stay for a year. It's really nice when people stay longer. But if a tenant's only staying for 1 year and then they're moving out, you have to clean the unit, you have to get it ready to rent, you have to list it, and then you have to wait until to find someone and then have them move in. So normally there's a month or two between those two things, right? It's very rare to have someone moving out and someone moving in the same day. Now that vacancy is going to cost you money. If you're making $2,000 a month off of rent and so that's $24,000 a year. if it's the whole year. But then let's say you're down 2 months, so now you're down to 20,000 a month or a year, right? So you're not technically making that 2,000 a month. You're making less. So my break even definition is with maintenance included, with capital expenditures included, and with vacancies included. And obviously that's just a guesstimate. Sometimes something bigger breaks, right? Like you have a maintenance bill that wipes out your whole year's cash flow, or you have a vacancy that's longer than you expected.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go with your best estimate, but yeah.
I'm glad that you brought that up because I was literally going to ask you that question. But you were mentioning a calculator that you use. Is that a calculator that you came up with, or is it something that's like standard out there?
I built it myself in
Nice.
Excel, and I could share it with anyone if they reach out to me. But they're like pretty standard numbers. I think I use if I could pull it up, but I think it's like 10% for maintenance,
Okay.
5%. So this is a percentage of the rent. So
Mm-hmm.
10% for maintenance, I think 5% for capital expenditures, and 5% for vacancies, or maybe even
Okay.
10% for vacancies. So if you're renting a place for $2,000, pretty much 25% is like the general rule of thumb. So if you're renting it for $2,000, you should account for $500 in maintenance, and capital expenditures, and in vacancies, averaged out throughout the year.
Yeah, and let me add to that as well, because when somebody's trying to buy a house and they already have a home that they're going to be renting out, or if they have another investment property, we always account for 25% for vacancies.
I didn't know
So,
that. Wow.
yeah. So if somebody has a mortgage on, let's say, a condo, right? All in. And we look at everything, even HOA is part of it.
Hmm.
So let's say everything is $2,000 and you're able to rent that out for $2,000. Okay. Now you're in the whole $500 because we have to take 25% off of that 2,000, which makes it 1,500. So now we have to count $500 of debt against you. And in most scenarios, this is a good thing because it's better than getting $2,000 of debt counted against you. It's only 500.
Right. Yeah, you're
So
still making that
it definitely
1,500.
helps. Yeah, that definitely helps.
Yeah.
So that's good to know. Now, as far as investments go, everybody that posts online, everyone always sees like, oh, it's so lovely to, be a rent homeowner and, have investment properties. It's all sunshine and rainbows, but it's really not. Now, tell us some experiences that you've had with a bad tenant or something that
Ooh.
stands out above the rest.
Oh man, I've got a few, and I will say this as I've only owned about five, I think four properties and 5 units that were rentals, and
Okay.
they all had some issues. And I sold a lot of my rentals because I was in partnerships that we just kind of wanted to dissolve, or I needed cash, or not needed, but just wanted to kind of to
For other
cash out
projects.
what I had in there for other projects. My first rental, it was a condo, and it wasn't in the best part of town. During the renovation, that was the one I bought for 40 grand. During the renovation, I had people breaking in and using the condo to use drugs. So I had to deal with that. And I was in Tucson, so it was a couple hours away. So I remember one
Wow.
time I had to drive down there to deal with that stuff. Luckily, my contractor was really good at helping me with all that. And we were able to get that fixed. And then once we had it rented out, it was awesome because the people weren't they were just breaking in because it was vacant and they knew that there was a place they can use. So that was great once we had to rent it out. Then when that renter, he was awesome, and he kept the place really nice and clean. And we listed it for rent again. The HOA went bad, and they switched companies, and the HOA wasn't taking care of the pool. There was a lot of people in the complex that were a little shady. So when we tried renting it out again, we had a big issue. Like everyone that was looking at it was like, nah. So I would have had to decrease rent a lot. So I decided just to sell that place.
Makes
And
sense.
that was why, and that's one reason I'm not opposed to condos 100%, but I definitely am a little more cautious with them because of HOAs. Not because of the HOA fee, but because of the HOA. You're reliant on another manager, and like I said, this HOA company wasn't even cleaning the pool, so it was really hard to and you're the landlord, so the tenant's gonna complain to you, but it's like it's out of my hands at that point.
Yeah.
Um, Another property we we had someone kind of scam us. He not
Okay.
completely, but what was it? He acted like he was on Section 8, if I'm remembering correctly. It wasn't Section 8. It was like a community program that Tucson had,
Okay.
and he either forged, we were getting paid from that program, so I don't remember what it was exactly, but he somehow forged some documents and we had to evict him. And yeah, that was a bad one. And then we had another house with a guest house, so it was 2 units, and that one was great. I mean, I loved that property. It was, we bought it for super cheap, and I did it with my friend Lauren, that lives in Tucson. And we remodeled it really nice. We were getting really strong rents for it, but we had some Section 8 tenants in the front, and they completely trashed the place. They weren't paying on time. Luckily we were getting the government payment every month, but they were
Yeah.
always behind on rent. Eventually we're, not paying completely. And I don't think we evicted them, but I think their lease was up, and so we didn't renew their lease. And then yeah, the place was just left horribly, like, just lots of trash everywhere. So we just cleaned that one up and sold that one too. So you definitely deal with
Gotcha.
your fair share of problems. You can try to mitigate them as much as possible by vetting people, or,
Mhm.
I will say if you're doing a renovation, it's nice to fix things well, because you will deal with issues on that front. But we definitely dealt with our fair share of issues. And one lesson learned with that was my buddy Jared told me a while back. He's like, if anyone's ever trying to buy a rental, I tell them, unless you have a plan to buy at least 5, to not do it. And the reason for that is
Wow.
because, yeah, the reason for that is because you get some sort of like economies of scale when you start buying more of them, right? If you have
Okay.
one of them and you have an issue there, that's like your only property, right? And now you're out X amount of dollars. Now, if you have 5 of them, 10 of them, you're not going to deal with issues on all 5 or 10. Hopefully not. That'd be
Yeah.
pretty bad if you did. But if you have like 10 of them and you deal with issues on 2, it's made up for a little bit because you have 8 other ones that are strong.
Yeah.
So I will say that, it's fine if you own 1 or 2, but it's a lot more beneficial when you buy more, because then
Okay.
those
I never
issues are
heard that
kind of like
before.
drowned out a little bit, and you're still going to deal with issues. You always are. But I think when you own more, now the number of issues is going to go up, but you have more that aren't, that are
The percent of the issues that are popping up are going to be a lot lower.
exactly. Exactly.
You
And
have one
they'll be made
unit.
up for. So,
Okay. So
yeah,
it's not all sunshine and rainbows, is what you're telling me.
definitely not.
Okay.
Definitely not.
So I'm sure, because this question just popped in my head, and I'm sure other people are thinking this. Is it better to self-manage or hire a property manager, especially if this is like your first one? Like, say it's a beginner, what should they do, or how should you approach that matter?
That's a great question. It really depends. There's a lot that goes into that. I like self-managing to a certain extent, but I'm also in real estate, so it's what I do all day. So taking an extra few calls a week or whatever it is fine. And also it depends. So it depends on like what you want, right? Some people want property managers. If you're willing to build out systems and processes to do it yourself, it's huge. Now, I have a friend that does both. He will self-manage his good rentals, right? So if it's in a good area and he's got good tenants in there already, or something like that, that tenant's been there for 5 years and they're going to stay for another 5. Like, he's going to self-manage that, because property management companies are going to cost you 8 to 10% of rent.
Hmm.
And you don't want to throw that away if you don't have to, right? But there's some properties you probably do want property managers on. So he's got some that he's like, hey, I have problem tenants in there, and you know, um, every year they're moving out and someone new is coming in. So on those, he's got a property manager. But then, my buddy Zach, he's got, I think, 300 rentals in Phoenix,
Wow.
just about, and he self manages. So it's doable. But especially, like I said, if you're trying to build out systems and processes yourself, like if you want to hire an assistant that could take calls, you can kind of bring the property management in house. So it really depends. I
Let me
personally would
ask
self
you. Oh,
manage.
go ahead. You would
Yeah.
self-manage?
Yeah. Right
Okay.
now, if it was me, I would self manage. But property management's definitely a good thing as well.
Okay. Now, is that on your calculator that you built out? Do you account for property management?
Yeah, great question, because I was going to say that. Even if you're going to self-manage, you have to put that 10% in your calculator. You
Oh,
have to.
really? How
Yeah,
come if you're self-managing it?
because you don't want to rely on you self-managing it, right?
I got you.
Because you don't want to get into a rental where your numbers were based on self-managing and you're like, "Ooh, I'm cash flowing. I'm making 100, $200 a month." And then you move out of state or you get a new job or you just decide, "Hey, I don't want to self-manage this thing anymore." Well, now you just went from making $200 to breaking even, because the property manager is going to charge you 10%, let's say on a $2,000 a month rental. So yeah, so I bake it in because it's because of a
Okay.
worst case scenario, because maybe like I said, maybe I want to give it to a property manager eventually. But if you self manage, that's all gravy. You're making that extra little bit. But I would always account for having a property management in there
Okay.
in that calculator. Yeah.
That's a good point to
So
make.
it's actually a little more than 25%. That's a good point you brought that up. It's probably closer to 35%
Mm-hmm.
with a property manager baked in there.
Yeah, definitely. Let me ask you this. When we get these reports, right? So I follow a lot of economic news. When we get these reports and they come in, like what are rental prices now versus last month and stuff like that. You as a landlord, if you have a good tenant, I'm sure you want to keep them in there, right? So do you try to keep prices the same or raise them very minimally so you can keep that good client? Do you like increase it at a steady 5% each year or whatever, or 3% each year?
I will do it very minimally if it's a good tenant, mostly because we talked about vacancy. I'd rather take care of someone and make sure they stay versus having to flip that unit to a new tenant. Now, you don't want to be grossly under rented, right,
Sure.
compared to market rents, but you want to be able to take care of people that are, easy to deal with and just helping people out as well.
Because that extra $100 is not worth coming with a new tenant, new headache and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And you
Even a
do want to
couple
raise
hundred
the rents
bucks.
because, like I said, you do want to raise it a little bit minimally, and sometimes not, but yeah, yeah,
Okay.
you definitely want to keep good people in.
Because a lot of these reports that come out, they're all new rental reports, right? So anytime somebody, like a property management company, if somebody's there and they're renting for 1,500, it's easier for the property management company to be like, well, hey, next year it's 1,700. You want it or not? Because
They
they
don't
have
care,
that
yeah,
leverage, right? Because the person's already in there, they're moved in, they're settled in, they got utilities, they got their mail coming in there. So like after 1 year, they could be like, well, hey, rent next year is going to be 1,700. So do you want to stay or do you want to not continue? Like, and they'll ask you this like 60 days before your lease is up. But then if like they're advertising new units, that same unit could probably be advertised for 1,500 or 1,550. So it's hard because we're seeing new rental increases and changes and stuff like that, but we're not seeing continuous rental like changes what's going on in the market. But that's what kind
it's
of
true.
popped in my head when I wanted to ask you as your perspective as a landlord. Um, Okay. Let me ask you, have you ever had to evict anybody?
Yeah, one time that guy that
Did
was
you?
kind of scamming us, yeah, but he left.
Oh, that guy?
It wasn't a hard eviction. He left on his own, so it wasn't. Yeah,
He
we
just
had
called
to.
it.
I think we formally had to file an eviction, but he left. We didn't have
He
to
left
show up
when you
with the
did
cops
that?
or anything. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, it's not just the eviction now. He's gonna have to deal with fraud.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure he
That
don't
was
want to
bad.
deal with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But my buddy John, our buddy John, my old business partner, he buys commercial properties, and he had to do an eviction. I was just listening to his podcast on the
Wow.
eviction, and we should have him on the show. He buys commercial properties now, which I've never done, and that's a whole different beast. But I'm sure our
Yeah.
listeners would want to hear about that as well.
Yeah, definitely a different game. Shout out to John Kleisch, my birthday twin. Danny and I grew up with him as Danny's business partner for what? You guys were together for what, 15 years? 12 years?
Different businesses. Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
I think we bought our first it was a hookah lounge and pool hall that we bought in like 2009.
Damn.
It's
Yeah,
2010 or
so
something like
longer than
that.
that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, 15, 16
Okay.
years.
I want to ask you, I want to get a little emotional on this topic, right? When you were a landlord or having that landlord mindset, what keeps them up at night? Like, what are some
What
things
keeps
that you worry about as a landlord, as an investment property owner?
stuff breaking?
Like
Usually,
anything
yeah.
in particular? Because what I think about is when I put myself in that scenario, I think about like flooding, like
Yeah,
overdoing the
major.
bathtub or toilet and everything
Yeah.
that scares the crap out of me. What
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah, I would say stuff like yeah, something like that, like major, like flooding, um, HVAC repairs, different things like that. Because one repair, we talked about, cash flows are minimal. You're making 100, $200 a month, most of the time. So, one big repair and that puts you out a lot. Hurts. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
flooding, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, it scares me because our house here growing up flooded before and it was crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot.
We had like 40 or 50,000 of stuff damaged. But the
Yeah.
pool table we had a
Yep.
big screen TV, surround sound, like the bass and everything. We had basketball cards, autograph cards that were all just messed up. And those were like thousands of dollars. Like we had Jordan autographs, Pippen autographs, all those Bulls team autographs, and they just went bye-bye. And
I remember that.
yeah, we had to literally redo the plumbing system from the crawl space all the way out to the backyard. Yeah, so that's probably some PTSD that I go through that I think about a lot. All right, cool. Did you want to add anything about rentals before we pivot over to the land stuff?
Yeah, I guess, on the financing side of things, so, we
Mm,
talked about DSCR loans, and this is maybe where you
yeah,
could chime in a little bit, but DSCR loans are essentially loans that look at the deal and don't look at the borrower as much, right? So it's looking at, like a traditional loan when you're buying a house, they look at your credit, your income, how much debt you have, all that stuff, right? But with a DSCR loan, they were awesome for me, especially because I was newly self-employed at the time when I was
yeah,
buying rentals. So it was almost impossible for me to go to a bank and get traditional financing. So the DSCR
100%.
loan was great because it really just looked at that deal. So it was saying, hey, you have this place rented out for $1,000 a month. We'll loan you X amount, right? And they'll do like it was a very easy process.
Yeah,
Can you
it's very easy,
can you
very
talk
clean.
to us about, some like, because obviously the goal was to get bank financing because then it was like, all right, I could get a better interest rate, but obviously you have to jump through more hoops. So can you talk to us more about like the different types of loans that you can get on rentals? And then I know there's like
Yeah.
I had friends that were doing like blanket loans or portfolio loans where they would put 5 houses into one loan or something like that.
Yeah. Well, typically, you have two pretty much buckets, right? The first bucket that you're going to have is traditional. That falls into conventional loans, jumbo loans, FHA, VA, and then you have USDA. Okay. So those are traditional. Those are the ones that you want to go to first to try to get approved for. If you can't, then you have to kind of go to this second bucket here, which we call it portfolio loans, right? In the business, we call it portfolio. Why is it called a portfolio? Is because a lot of self-employed people that want to tax shelter their income, but also buy investment properties and expand their portfolio. That's kind of where the name came from. Or you can call it QM, qualified mortgage, or non-QM, non-qualified mortgage. The reason why you'd want to go with traditional is because these are very simple, like almost 90%, 95% of all guidelines have to be followed by all lenders and banks and credit unions, right? There's a 5% that could be different amongst one another, and that's very small. But let's say, like you weren't self-employed for 2 years, right? Let's say you were just self-employed
Mhm.
for 6 months. You can't do any of the traditional route. You'd have to go to the portfolio route. For example, you could do a bank statement loan. So if you're self-employed and it's been less than a year and you haven't filed any tax returns, we could show them, hey, look at the last 6 months of your business account and show how much deposits are coming in from work. And the lender will assess a percentage of that is being accounted for your expenses, right? So let's say your supplement store that you had, right? So let's say you were showing deposits of like 20,000 a month, okay? What they would do initially is take that 20,000 a month, okay, that's your gross, and they'll account for 50% going towards expenses. So if 50% of it's going towards expenses, now your net income that you could use or qualify with is $10,000 a month. For the most part, it's good. You can do that for primary residence. You could do it for an investment property. Now, DSCR is also very good because what they want to do is they want to see that the property is breaking even at minimal or even cash flowing. If you're breaking even, let's say you buy a multi-unit building. Let's say you buy a 4-unit building and your mortgage, which is your principal, your interest, your property taxes, your homeowner's insurance. Let's say all of that goes to $6,000 a month. That's your mortgage, right? Now you have 4 units, and let's say you rent each one for $1,500. $1,500 times 4 is 6,000. So you're literally equal. They call that a 1-to-1 ratio, right? Now, there's some lenders that allow you to go to 80% of it. So if you're at 6,000 of your mortgage, right, you can make income from the rent at 80%. So what's 80% of that? Like 4,800 a month.
Mm.
So some of them that will allow that. But again, that's a riskier purchase. So then you're going to get hit with a higher interest rate. But if you buy a great cash flowing property and you're at like 1.2%, right? Let's say you're bringing in as you're bringing in 7,200 versus your mortgage at 6,000. Now you're at a 1.2% ratio, which is 120%. Now that looks much better. And when it looks much better, especially when you're trying to qualify, you're going to get a better interest rate. And interest rates on DSCRs, like I said, they're very good. They're between primary and investment property numbers. And the process is very clean. And if you have to, I would say go DSCR. But what I do is if you tell me, Dan, you come up to me and say, hey, I need to buy an investment property. Okay, cool. Let me still get your documents. Okay. So I'm going to do a lot of heavy work up front. Why? Because we haven't started the process. I want to get everything done up front to make sure that I can do everything as accurate as possible. If you give me your tax returns, you give me your W-2s, you give me your pay stubs, you give me your assets, right, in the bank, you give me your mortgage payment or whatever. I put everything out there. I look at everything as a whole and I say, all right, Danny, it looks like the options of doing an investment property traditionally will not work out for you. So let's go explore these 2 other options, right? So I always want to make sure I get everything as a whole because I always provide options. Like we have a client right now buying residential primary residence. We had them in an FHA program and then we switched them to a conventional. Now, FHA was easier to get done. They could have put less money down, but then we looked at the pros and cons, did a video presentation, sent it out to them, and they made the decision. I gave them my opinion. Danny, I don't know if you spoke to them and gave them your opinion, but I gave them my opinion and I was like, here's the video. Here's all the information you need. Ask me any questions you have, but make that decision on which route you want to go to. And it always helps. So, I mean,
Yeah.
long story short, DSCRs could be a great, great, great outlet for investors to use.
You look at all options and empower the people to make their own decision.
Always. I mean, for example, if the market is not crazy booming, why not FHA?
Yeah.
Depends, right? If your credit's bad, like let me give you a quick scenario. If your credit is not good, if you're at a 650 credit score and you're buying a $500,000 house, you can get hit with a PMI of $500 a month just going to the
Wow.
lender for PMI. But if you do the same thing as an FHA, your PMI could be 240 a month because it's set on a set calculator. It's not set by your credentials. FHA is strictly 0.5% of the loan amount goes to your PMI.
Wow.
So that could be something to think about as
That's
well. That's
huge.
a
Yeah.
$250 swing. Yeah.
Lots of levers.
A lot of levers, like how you say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Do you have anything else any questions on the financing for that?
No, that's pretty
No.
self-explanatory. But yeah, I mean, obviously, when I do have questions, I come straight to you. So I
Of course.
suggest anyone else do that.
Now, for people that are looking to buy rentals, right, reach out to Danny and have that initial call, that initial consultation call, because that's where we call it discovery phase, right? That's where Danny asks you tons of questions, not because he's trying to nag you, not because he's trying to get a lot of information from you. He's trying to learn about what your goals are, because then that way Danny will be able to provide you with the game plan on how to help your goals, whether you're looking at goals in 6 months, 1 year, or 10 years down the road. Danny has that experience to do that. When you reach out to him, set up that initial consultation call with him. He's not hard to find. Do that. And then from that first phone call, you'll know a lot more about which route to take and which levers Danny could pull for you.
Love it.
All
Yeah.
right.
Definitely reach out.
Let's switch to land deals. Okay. So I know after the rentals and stuff like that, you pivoted towards land, right?
Yep.
Okay. So when you bought land, did you just buy land as a whole, or did you buy land and maybe build something on top of it and rent it, or did you build something on top of it and sell it? Like, tell me about it.
So when we originally started, we had met someone that was flipping land and we're like, oh, this seems pretty cool. Like, it's obviously real estate. something we've came across but never knew what to do with. So we started marketing for land, and we originally were just flipping, and mostly we just flipped land, vacant,
Untouched?
untouched. You just get a good
Wow.
deal on it and buy it, list it, sell it. And which was great because it was like, hey, we're not having to do much. We're not as far as renovating and stuff like that goes. But there was a lot of downside because land takes a lot longer to sell, and then
Yeah.
on the financing piece of things, land is not usually
Yeah.
something that you get financing for unless you're
It's not
building something
easy.
on it. Yeah. So yeah, most of land deals that I've done were just buy and sell. And then we did get into some
Danny, sorry to
improvements.
interrupt, but you said buy and sell. Are you able to flip land?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
you get a good deal on it. Again, it's similar to wholesaling where you're giving
Wait, did
people
I
the
say flip?
convenience. Yes,
I'm sorry. I meant, can you wholesale land or
you
did you?
can. Yeah.
Okay.
We did something similar where while you're under contract, you list it and find a buyer for it on
Mm-hmm.
the MLS. So that's technically wholesaling because, we would pretty much find someone to buy it while we were under contract. However,
Mm.
it's not like houses where you're wholesaling to like an investor. You can, because there's developers that want land, and we've done that too before, where you get a piece of property under contract and you assign it to, like, let's say, a home builder, but it's less common for sure. So you could still wholesale it from like a legal standpoint,
Okay.
but it's less common. It's not like the traditional wholesaling with houses.
What's like the margin? Like how much can you make on when you guys were, flipping land?
I think our average spend was about 12 grand. And it really depends
Okay.
because it depends on the area you're in. If, the higher price value the land is, the more you're going to make, right? But we were doing a lot of stuff in Arizona and especially in rural areas where the retail value of it was 30, 40 grand. So when we were selling it, that's how much we were selling it for. So the spreads are going to be a lot less with that. But, we've done some fairly hefty land deals too, because, we've done some that were big pieces of land in North Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
or even in Arizona, just, like more expensive land in better areas. So it just really depends. Land is definitely kind of all over the place. There's a lot of land that is pretty worthless too. So we learned that pretty quick.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you. I had a client that owned, I think, like 40 acres of land in Arizona.
Yep, we looked at
And I
that.
think, yeah, we did, right?
Yeah.
And I think, or tell me if I'm wrong, I think there was like 3 acres out of the whole 40 that was like viable to like build on, right? Like a
Yeah,
property.
yeah, yeah.
How
There
often do
was
you come across that?
a lot.
Really?
Yeah, the flood zones. I think that's what that one was like a river, like a pretty big river. I mean, it was a dry river, but when it rains, water runs through there. So there's a
Oh,
lot of
wow.
flood zones. When we were doing stuff in Florida, there's a lot of wetlands. There's a lot of unusable land. Some land that's, especially in Arizona, on the side of a cliff. So there was a big learning curve for us when we got into land because there was stuff you didn't know that you look at. You didn't really know to look at elevation or topography, and then you look and you're like, wow, this thing's so slanted, no one's gonna be able
Mm-hmm.
to build on that, stuff like that. But I also learned that a lot of people buy land that is unusable because they just want land too. So there's people that just want to own vacant, empty land in the middle of the desert, and
Why would they want to do that?
some people like it for investment. You just hold it, you buy it and you hold it. Some people use it for recreational purposes. They'll go out there and camp, hunt,
Okay.
just hang out. Yeah, a lot of the properties we sold were far from utilities, but people just wanted it. So you'd be surprised.
So would it be something like, for example, what is that place called in North Phoenix that they're building that huge area, TP or something? What is it?
TSMC.
TSMC. But would a somebody that likes buying land, would they like maybe go like 10, 15 minutes north of there and see if they can pick up some land because they'll know that that subdivision is just going to grow, grow, grow in the outskirts and then eventually be worth more money? Is that like a thought process that they have?
Yeah, potentially, but I would say that 10, 15 minutes north is probably already pretty expensive.
Oh,
People
okay.
do buy land on speculation though, and
Hmm.
maybe someone 10 years ago was like, hey, someone's going to build something up in here at some point, and they came across some land and bought it. So that does happen a lot. I do see that where
Hmm.
especially, like people know a big manufacturer might come into town, or they might build a freeway through this city at some point or something like that. So people do buy land on that type of speculation. It's hard to
Okay.
cash flow monthly on land. So I would say it's not, I don't like it personally as like something to hold long term, but people have made some decent money.
All right. So what's different about land and homes? Like when it comes to the purchasing process, when it comes to maybe appreciation, maybe even, the attraction, like what type of buyers does it attract when you're trying to sell them? Or like what are people looking to do mostly when you're selling them out to people? Are they looking to build, and are they looking to kind of do the same thing you are, maybe sell it for a higher amount? What do you see with the differences between homes and land?
So the biggest difference is, yeah, the use, I would say. And with land, it really just depends on what type of land it is. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of land in the middle of nowhere. On
Mm-hmm.
that, you would attract more people that were using it for recreational purposes or just wanted to own some land. I feel like
Okay.
land ownership, there's like a pride of land ownership, right? But if, we came across or flipped like an infill lot, which infill lot means it's like a lot in town that has utilities at the street. There's houses next to it. It's pretty much like in a
Mm,
subdivision, call it.
okay.
Those you would attract more people that were building on it right away. So it was all over the board because we kind of marketed to like all different types of land. So it was pretty split, but I would say we did about half infill, half recreation.
Okay.
So just really depends on the type of land you're selling. It's definitely land is more so a thing that for the most part people just own. It's not like their personal residence. So there's less emotional attachment to it. So on the buying side, it made things a little easier because
Okay.
usually it was just like some thing that someone owned versus like the home they grew up in or something like that. So I made it
Yeah.
easier to buy. Like I said, land took longer to sell. I think our conversion was 3 to 6 months on average versus, when we're wholesaling, we have stuff gone in a few days, or when you're flipping, you're closer to 2 to 3 months. With land, it sits. And a lot of times it's not price, it's just it takes a while to find the specific buyer for that piece of land.
So you're saying it takes that long once you list it, 3 to 6
Yeah.
months till you close, or once you get under contract?
Once we would list it.
So how long would it take usually after you get under contract till closing?
If we were buying it and not listing it while we were under contract, we would close it. I mean, we would close it out pretty quick. And once we got a title report, we'd be good to go. We were buying stuff cash because, as I spoke about earlier,
Financing.
lenders weren't financing on it. So we could close pretty quick. Now, there is due diligence with land as well. So depending on what we were doing with it, we did get into some, I wouldn't call it building, but we did a couple of deals where we bought vacant land. We had utilities hooked up to it. We put a
Mm,
mobile home on it, brand new, and then we sold it that way. Or there was even a couple we just put utilities on it and then sold it. So we were doing like minor improvements. Sometimes you could just like clear the land, because you'll have like shrubs and weeds and just random bushes that you could clear out, make it look nicer and sell it. So we got into like some stuff like that. Those would take a little longer, but yeah.
that's good to know. Now, so
And
let go
sorry,
ahead.
so I was mentioning due diligence. So if we were putting a mobile home on it, we would want to make sure that, we'd get a survey done to make sure that our boundaries are good. And
Hmm.
a survey pretty much is someone that comes out that does their research and figures out where your land actually is to make sure no one's encroaching on it, and to know your boundaries. And then we would do where we were doing land, there wasn't a sewer line at the street. So we would have to get septic systems installed. So we'd have to
Mm,
do percolation tests, which are also called perk tests, that would
okay.
test the soil to make sure that you can install a septic system on there. So you want to do
Okay.
that. And then if you're buying like more industrial or commercial land, you want to do some environmental studies to make sure that the soil is good. So there's still some due diligence, and inspection periods for land on a typical Arizona contract are actually 30 days versus a house is 10 days.
Wow.
So usually you have to do more due diligence and it takes
Environmental tests and
longer.
stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah, yep.
Yeah, wow. Okay. So are people that own land, like, do they go there and just park like an RV there? Is that okay?
It depends. Yeah. I mean, you have zoning, and usually, yeah, if it's like general land in the middle of nowhere, yeah, some people just go camp out, park a RV, or even,
Uh,
yeah, you could just live on it in an RV. But there's certain areas, yeah, you can't do that. If it's like within a city and the city's got ordinances against that, then you gotta So there's also that to land too. There's zoning and ordinances and things like that that you have to watch out for.
Okay.
So yeah, it depends.
So I'm just thinking like, okay, if you own something in the city, that's just land. I don't know. You magically owned land for 30 years and then now it's in downtown Phoenix or
Yeah.
Tempe or whatever. The audience doesn't know this, but I remember we were like 18 years old. We were trying to get some parking lots in downtown Chicago
Yep.
or Lincoln Park, and we were starting our own valet parking service. But I remember at that time we were looking, I was talking to my dad about buying a parking lot or something. So we saw one when we were driving in the city, and it was like, okay, you have to buy this, and this is part like one of 3 that you have to buy. And at that time, we were 18 years old, so it was like 1.1 million, right? So those were already gravel to make parking. Now, if you own a piece of land, right, like literally right next to like downtown, or if it's in downtown, are you able to turn it into a parking lot and have maybe a high rise, be able to park there, or maybe build a parking structure on top of that?
It all depends on what the city requires. And every city's gonna be different, every county's gonna be different. You know, some counties you could just turn dirt into a parking lot and call it a day. Some are gonna require gravel, some are gonna require asphalt, some are gonna require power so that you could have lights in there. Some will require, you know, an employee on board, so you need
Wow.
a bathroom now. So it really depends. It's hard to answer that because every municipality is different.
Mm,
You know, we've owned land before where I've looked into like doing truck parking on it, and it was in this small town, but they required a fence
hmm
and asphalt. So it was like, man, this is, you know, it would have costed a lot of money just to turn that into a parking lot. So it depends. You have to look
That's,
into what your city or county requires.
yeah, I was looking into
Yeah.
that over here too.
Yeah. I'm sure it's
Awesome.
a little more
So,
stringent there too. So
oh, of course, of
yeah,
course. Any way to make your life more difficult in Chicago,
of course. Yeah.
they'll take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So, do you still actively flip land?
No, I sold. So we've got a couple projects. So there's different things you could do with land, which is great. Like we talked about, there's the mobile homes. There's minor improvements you can make. There is subdividing. So we've bought lots before where you split them up into smaller lots and sell it off like that. And that does a couple things. It makes people more interested in it because it's smaller,
Yeah.
because they could, you know, they can build on it. Your price per acre a lot of times will go up when it's
Up.
smaller. So like a 20-acre parcel in a certain area might sell for 10,000 an acre. But if you make them 5 acre each one, now you could sell it for 15,000 an acre. So that's when subdividing is really good. And Arizona, and we're doing one project in North Carolina right now.
Still?
Yeah, we're about to sell the last couple right now, but
Okay.
if you stay within certain parameters, the subdivide's super easy. Like you just have a surveyor draw it up and then you just record it with the county. We've done 2 of them in Arizona, and you know, we took, I think one of them was like 10 acres or 13 acres and we made it 5 parcels. The other one was like 4 acres and we made it 3 separate parcels. And
Mm,
since we kept it under 5 in Arizona, if you stay within 5, you don't need any approval. These are like out in the middle of nowhere county lots. I'm not talking in the middle of a city, but you don't need any approval.
hmm
You literally have a surveyor draw it up and split the parcels and record them with the county, and now they're just new parcels. They're smaller parcels. So those are called minor subdivides. That's a really, really good route. And I do look for those still. I'll look
Still?
on the
Okay.
MLS. Yeah. I don't do any marketing for off-market land, but I will look for like on-market properties, or I'm on wholesale lists. So if I come across anything good, I'll, you know, I'll do it. I like those because, you know, there's, like I said, it's pretty easy to do. You just buy a lot, split it up into smaller parcels and sell each one. The one in North Carolina we're doing, that was a really big one. We got, I think it was about 80 acres and we split it up into 8 parcels and we're selling those off right now. That was like a really, really big project, but that one's going to be, you know, very good. We're making a decent amount of money on it. We partnered up with someone, raised money for it, but that one was an awesome project. And we didn't build anything other than, we know we did build like a road,
Hmm.
stuff like that, but we didn't build any structures on it. So, you know,
Nice.
it's a good way to make money with land is to split them up and, you know, and sell them off. And then there's also entitling, which I've never done.
What
So
is
I'll
that?
just give like it's pretty much So anytime a building is built, it
Okay.
goes through, or even subdivisions, they go through the city and county approval process, and then a developer develops them. A lot of times, the developers will buy the land already entitled, meaning it's already gone through all the approvals.
Mm-hmm.
And so you as like an investor, what you do is you buy a parcel of land, you go through the county approval process to, let's say, build a 100-unit apartment building on that land.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a long time and it costs a lot of money, but once it's entitled, now a developer will pay a lot of money for that piece of land because now all they have to do is buy it and then build on it because it's already
Oh,
approved.
because you're doing that heavy lifting for them before you even sell it.
Exactly. So
I
it's
think you
not raw
mentioned this
land
before.
anymore. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I've never done it, but I do know some guys that do it, and it's definitely pretty cool. It's something you could do with land. You could do it with, you could entitle it, apartments, single family home subdivisions,
Wow.
commercial properties, whatever it is, mixed use even, but it's pretty cool because like I said, you're not actually developing it. You're, like I said, you're spending a lot of money on running tests, doing environmentals and working with the county or the city to figure out how much sewer line is needed and all this
Mm-hmm.
other stuff. But I don't want to talk too much about the details, but it's essentially
Yeah.
buying a raw piece of land, not doing anything to it physically, but making it doing paper stuff to it, right? You get paper approval for something, and then you sell it to a developer that actually does build those, whatever you
Okay.
entitled it for. So it's pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that is pretty cool. How you can just, if you're good at that, I mean, why not do it? And then whoever comes and picks it up, they'll pay extra for that because you've done that service
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So subdivides, is it like a complicated process or is
It
it
can
fairly
be, it
easy?
depends. Yeah, like the minor subdivisions we did, they were
Hmm.
fairly easy. Like I said,
Okay.
on one of them we did some improvement to the land. We like carved out a road so people can see like, hey, this is where my parcel is. But overall, it was pretty easy.
Okay.
The other one I did in Arizona, it was a straight paper subdivide, which that's what I call it. Like,
What does that mean?
we split the lots up. We had a surveyor go out there and split them, but we didn't do any work. Like we didn't carve out a driveway. Like it was just on paper, we split these parcels up and we sold them off each. Right? So it was three parcels. We made sure everyone had access, and we made sure that, the percolation test was done and people could build on them, but we didn't pull power to the back lot. Like it was
Okay.
like just paper. So they can be easy. Now, if you go over 5, now you're talking, you need like fire department approval. You need a lot more. So
Okay. Now, if somebody was to buy land, how much more money can you make if they were to buy land, parcel it off, subdivide, right, into like 4 different parcels, and then put a mobile home on there, like a fixed mobile home on there? How much? I know it's going to cost a lot more money, but could that be worth doing where it increases your profit margins?
absolutely. I mean, it depends, right? They're
Of
like
course.
everything else. It depends on the area. It depends on, what's land selling for versus what are mobile homes selling for.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just have to kind of gauge like, okay, I could make X amount on flipping it. I could make X amount on splitting it up and then flipping it, or I can make X amount on splitting it up, putting a mobile home on it and all that. And then it's like sometimes it's not worth it, right? Like if you could
Yeah.
walk away from just flipping that big parcel and make 20 grand, it might not be worth going through all that work to make 40 grand on a mobile home. So it's
Yeah.
it's hard to say, but it really depends. It depends on a lot of different factors, but kind of just like we talked about in the last episode, when is it worth wholesaling versus when's it worth flipping? It all
Yeah.
depends. There's a lot that goes into it, but yeah, that's a great question, but it would be a case by case basis. There was multiple that we looked at them and we're like, man, this would be cool for mobile homes. And you crunch numbers
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, on that one that we did 3, we split it up into 3 parcels. I was like, man, we could throw mobile homes on each of these. And then we
Uh-huh.
crunch numbers and you're like, yeah, we're gonna make like a little bit more. Like I'd rather just sell this off as is,
Nice.
and not
Okay.
deal with all that headache and risk. So
Okay, cool.
yeah.
So, we should be wrapping this up here. Let me just ask you really quick. What was your biggest win on land?
Couple things. Land can create passive-ish income. It is actually pretty passive, but we sold a lot of land on notes, which is seller financing. So we created mortgages on them. So we bought it for a certain dollar amount, and then instead of selling it to someone for cash, we sold it to them on owner financing. So we currently
Oof.
have a few notes that are bringing in monthly money, and those notes are worth something too, because
Sure.
we still have unpaid principal balances that can pay off at any point. Some of them have balloons on them that will pay off at certain points, or the person's paying us monthly. So that's that delayed gratification we talked about. Instead of taking a cash payment up front, we took less cash, but then we now are making money monthly. So I really liked that. And we were buying the land for so cheap in certain scenarios that we weren't really leaving money in these notes, because you could go out and buy notes just like rentals. Like you can go buy rentals off the MLS. You're giving up more money,
Hmm.
but you're making some cash flow. But with the notes that we created, we were able to buy the land for so cheap that we weren't really creating these notes for that much money. And in one instance, we made money, we made cash and created a note. So
Nice.
yeah, that was a really big
Nice.
win. But then other than the notes, and seller financing, our biggest one win is for sure that North Carolina deal. Like we haven't even sold it all, but we've already that was a really, really, really big deal. It's taken years, but I think we're coming up on 2 years of us being under contract on. I think we went under contract in August of 2024,
Wow.
but really big project. And that one, yeah, I would love to do more of those. It was, yeah,
Yeah, for sure. If
that
you
was
don't
the
mind me
biggest win.
asking, when you hold notes, like what are some like rates that you're charging them for the financing?
10.99%.
Did you guys just do that standard for everybody? You don't go through a process?
No, yeah, we do standard for everybody. There was one note we sold for a little bit less because it was just really bad land that we bought when we first
Yeah.
started and didn't know a lot about. We just got an offer and we're like, yeah, let's just get rid of it. Like, I think that guy's at like 8%, still better than any
Yeah.
savings account. But
So
yeah,
I'm glad you said that. What's a mistake that you made early on, or what do you see a lot of people making mistakes in as beginners?
just not knowing about negative aspects of land. So on
Mm.
that one, it was just like a really slow moving area. That was before we really knew, hey, how to like correctly comp land and look at how fast the stuff's selling in that area. And we actually bought that one. We didn't try wholesaling it. So that kind of sucked. I mean, it wasn't much. It was cheap, but definitely a lesson learned there. And then like we talked about earlier, flood zones, not checking for flood zones. And then topography, not checking to see what slope is like, because it's kind of hard to tell. We're doing a lot of this stuff virtually. We're not driving out to check out this
Yeah.
land. So, you learn as you go how to read topo maps that show
Hmm.
what's the elevation like, or using Google Maps to get a 3D image instead of just looking at it from satellite. Just not doing due diligence correctly and knowing what to look out for. So that's why I think, if anyone reaches out to me, I can help them, look for things that I've made mistakes on in the past with land and help them navigate that.
Definitely. Definitely. Now, I know we're over time, but can I do rapid fire questions for
Let's
you?
go.
All right,
Let's go.
cool. Properties, wholesale or flipping? Pick one. Flipping? Okay. Flipping
It
or
depends though.
no,
But
no, 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 no.
so I'm answering what I would do right now.
Okay. Right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Flipping or holding?
Holding.
Okay. We didn't talk about this, but long-term rentals or short-term rentals / Airbnb?
Long-term rentals.
All right. Property flipping or land flipping?
Ooh, property flipping, like
Land,
house flipping,
yeah. Land flipping or subdivides?
subdivides,
Subdivides or property flipping?
subdivides.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
So we just saw what Danny likes, what Danny prefers. Okay.
Yep.
If you guys have any questions about this episode, again, this was all Danny. This is his forte. This is what he's built his real estate business on for the last 10 plus years. Whatever questions, or if you need some help looking to find the best land deal, to buy the best rental property, or even looking to need somebody to list your, wholesale flips or anything like that, you know where to reach him. Instagram, you could reach him out on LinkedIn. Danny, what's your Instagram handle?
DSB Explores.
There you go. All right. Anything you want to mention before we close up?
No, that was fun.
Awesome. Well, Danny touched up a little bit on these notes and stuff. That's probably going to be something that we're going to mention later on in another episode. But send us any messages or any topics that you want us to talk about, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you guys.